very few. Very few have a PR plan, and of those very few, a lot of them have a plan where they brought in a consultant at some stage and said, we need a PR plan, a crisis PR plan, and they produced this thick tome, which they gave to everybody and said, this is our crisis PR plan, and then it sits on a shelf somewhere, so it's absolutely no use. It's as good as having none. Crisis PR, everybody was talking about, back in their day, there were no mobile phones and there were no God knows what. Back in my day when I started, exactly the same thing. If you had a crisis, you probably had, in fairness, you had the guts of maybe 2 to 3 days to get a handle on the crisis. So something went wrong and you said, okay, let's sit down and figure out what went wrong, how do we deal with it, who do we talk to? You had time. Now you've got a matter of hours. News is on the hour, social media is on the minute. It used to be a case of, will you give media access to the site to see what happened? Now it's, have you seen it? Somebody put it up on Twitter. It's already out there. So the big difference with crisis now is the amount of time that you have to react. That's one big difference. But the second is the amount of time that you're given to explain. Because when I'm back, nearly 25 years ago I formed the Academy. So 25 years ago, if you tried to explain to somebody what exactly went wrong, like we were handling a charity in crisis recently, and if we had done that way back when, we'd have said, okay, what we need to do is we need to sit you down, get you to talk to a journalist, explain exactly what happened, tell them why you are a good charity, show them the figures, work everything through, maybe do a television and a radio interview. But it was about put your point of view and explain in detail. What we did with this charity was we said, okay, what you actually need to do is you need to get into RTE, you need to do 6-1 News, we've set it up, and I'm going to do 2 hours with you to get a soundbite. And over those 2 hours, we worked it down to a 24-second soundbite, which explained exactly what had happened with the charity, and which was very difficult to edit. And when we were actually going in to do the training, my client had said, I don't need what do I need 2 hours for? And I said, A, to empty your head of everything that's already in it, and B, to get the message. Because it really is an awful expression, but everything is about being on message. People only want a 24/7. They can tell you the whole history of the world now in a minute. You're trying to defend something that has possibly gone wrong. If you can't do it in 24 seconds, people will move on. They'll press the button and do something else. So that's the other great change with crisis. And the other thing is that we get less and less time from my point of view. If you ring me and say, I'm in crisis, it's probably already too late. So it's how fast do you need to react and why. And just one other thing, we handled a different charity last year. And the approach from the charity was that they needed to issue a statement about what was going on. And they needed to issue it immediately. And would I please structure the statement? And I said, fine, why don't we sit down and talk about it and tell me exactly what is going on? And then we'll see what we do with the statement. And when we finished, it was a very convoluted case, but when we finished it all, I said, okay, there's an awful lot in there. What do you need a statement for? And the man who was the chief executive said, I need a statement for media. And I said, what media? And he said, media, hello, radio, television, newspapers. And I said, names, pictures, writing for which newspaper, specifically who in the Irish Times is looking for you. I said, no, I was advised by somebody that we need to issue a statement. And crisis is all about whether or not the client actually takes the good advice that you're given. It's like going to a doctor and he says, give up smoking. You do or you don't. It's your call. And with this man, I said to him, you can issue a statement and I'll tell you what will happen. You will just light a fire. You will never recover from it. Because nobody is actually publicly saying anything at the moment. There was a High Court injunction against information coming out. We knew it would come out. I said to him, actually what we need to do now is sit down and figure out what happened, when did it happen, let's get the whole dates, times, facts, figures, and exactly what you say to media, and we prep the statement, but you do nothing with it until somebody specifically asks, and then we issue it. But if he had issued a statement at the time, he would have just created, you could see everybody with the statement landing in saying, oh, yippee-ki-yay, didn't know there was a problem there, let's go after it. So that's crisis.
So what are the kind of different modules on the program?
It really depends on what the individual client is looking for. It's the same thing. You come in, some people will say, we've done crisis planning, but we need to upgrade it, which is fine. Others will say, what I actually need for crisis is I need to know who are my good communicators and who are my bad, because in a crisis it just keeps going. It's a 24/7 news cycle. So you may be brilliant at communicating, but you're going to get exhausted after 4 or 5 or 6 hours. So who's the next person who's in, and who's the person after that? We did some training with the major semi-state, and we had the chief executive, the deputy chief and his deputy, 3 men. And I had listened to the first 2, and I stepped away when the third guy was doing his prep, and it was radio prep. And eventually the woman who was doing the interviews came in to me and she said, you need to go in there and listen, because it's like pulling hen's teeth. And I said, this guy can talk for Ireland. I know him. Came in, listened to each of them. He was awful. We broke. When we were finished, I said to him, okay, I need you to walk me to my car. And he said, are you nervous? And I said, extremely nervous. Walk me to my car. As he walked me to my car, I said, what the hell happened in there? You could talk for Ireland. As soon as somebody started asking you questions, you clammed up. And it was crisis training. And the chief executive knew he was the chief executive, so if he screws up, well, he screws up, he's the chief exec, get over it. It's my gig. The deputy was very confident, but the third guy knew that the chief exec was going to retire, the deputy was going to be bumped up one, he was going to be bumped up to deputy. But if he screwed up the interviews, he was never going to make it to deputy. So his answer was, his way of coping was that he said nothing. It was like, is your name Gerry Duffy? Correct. This is death by 1,000 blades on radio and television. And in the end I said to him, fine, what I'm going to do is, if you're that nervous, I'm going to take you off the schedule, I'm going to replace you with somebody else who does interviews, and you need to make sure that no matter what happens, you never ever do an interview, because I'll make sure you never get the bloody job if you take an interview and answer it like that. And in fairness to him, he was actually asked to do an interview about 6 or 8 months afterwards. And somebody said to me, I talked to somebody afterwards, and they said, he's a very nice guy, but he'll give you a disobliging bugger by times as well. And I said, no, I completely forgot him. I found him really nice to deal with. Why? He said, I wanted him, I got stuck and I wanted him to do an interview on what's the radio station in Sligo? And he said, I rang him up and he's going, yuck, 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 yuck. And I said, could you do the interview for me? And he went, and I have a very bad throat. He said, suddenly he got this hoarse throat and he didn't do the interview. I thought, brilliant. He is actually the deputy chief executive now of the same organisation.
Do you do any role play part of it?
We do better than role play. We actually do kind of 2 things. If we're prepping you for a media interview, we'll do, I'm a great believer that people get comfortable with your style. So if you come in and you're doing a television interview, for example, I may do the first element with you and say, okay, what's the message you're trying to get across? How are you trying to get it across? What are you trying to say? So you get used to my style, so you get very comfortable with it. It's like, yeah, I know where she's coming from, I know the kind of way she asks questions. And then we break for lunch or whatever. And then we come back and I'll say, here's Mr. Jimmy Greeley. And he is now going to ask you the questions. They go, who the hell is he? I don't know what his style is. And that's real world. And he will come in with a brief. He doesn't know what I've taught that morning. His job is to actually say, this is the crisis, I'm going to ask you about it. Your job is to see how well did I train you that morning to bat against it. So it's very much real world. And you take it away with you and play it back and go, now I know what you meant. I didn't answer that well, or I actually led him down that tunnel and I shouldn't have. I gave that one away. So very much role play. Oh, it's everybody. But crisis, the real skill with crisis is looking at what's the message, how are you going to get it across, and how does it impact on all of these different audiences. So it's how will the employees see it, how will your shareholders see it, how it may play well in Ireland, how will it play in the States. Look at BP and the Gulf oil, and the oil spill there. When one of the most basic, simple things that BP did was they sent over an entire team of British people to handle an American oil spill. Now you would think that somebody would have said, hello, you're going to America. Maybe sounding like this and saying, this is my PR guy who says, hello, I'm the PR guy. And this is my, this is my lawyer, hello, I'm the lawyer. He's from London, he's from Birmingham, I'm from wherever. And you go, for God's sake, they all talk like that over there. They expect, like, bring in somebody who doesn't know York, who said, I know what's happening. It's real common sense. And I spoke to a guy who wrote a fascinating book about the spill. And he said that from minute one, Americans looked at this team of British people and thought, it's BP oil, it's British petroleum. They've sent over 4 key British executives. It's an American oil spill, and they're going to tell us what they got wrong and how to fix it. And just very simply, if they had put an American, if they brought in an American, common sense says, if you're an American, you land over in Ireland, you bring in an Irish person and say, how does it work here? Yeah. They should have, like at a minimum, they should have brought in an American and said, how does it work over here? And the journalist actually said to me that he thought the biggest mistake they made was that they thought America operated like Britain. And in Britain, what you do is very much like Ireland. You set up a tribunal, we all investigate, we review, because you might die and you might never know what happened. And in America, they say, there's an oil spill, I want somebody in jail, behind bars, go, look at this bugger, it was his fault, in jig time. And they actually didn't realise what the Americans would want was a head-on plate. So that their entire strategy was wrong from minute one. I would say to somebody, okay, what you now need to do is you need to go out and talk. We had a client on the Late Late a number of years ago, and I had said to her she was extraordinarily stressed. And actually what people forget is that if you're in a crisis, it really is a crisis for you. Like, you've got a gazillion things happening and people are telling you all kinds of things and your head is fried, and I'm there on the side going, no, it's media, it's really very important. Forget everything that's happening here, because if you get it wrong on media, it doesn't matter. You don't have a business left or a charity left or whatever anyway. But part of it is actually saying, you need to do the likes of the Late Late, and then what you do is you hang up the phone, you put my mobile number on it, and you say, I've died, phone gunning, and you like pull up the duvet, drink 6 bottles of wine, I don't care, you've done the Late Late, it's covered it. And part of it is saying, whatever you do, don't go near the Late Late, or don't take the 6-1 news. Or I had a client who fell out with me because she was offered Morning Ireland, and I said I was very sorry, she had a tummy bug or something, what the hell she had. I came up with something anyway, she couldn't do it, and I rang her and she said, how dare you, I would love to do Morning Ireland. And I said, I know, but they will eat you alive. You're not at a Morning Ireland level. Somebody else needs to do it. Because it wasn't that she didn't understand what she was doing, it wasn't that she hadn't got a good grasp of it. She just couldn't do, the Morning Ireland, the rat-a-tat-tat, and did you, but what's the story with, and they constantly interrupt. She was no good for that kind of debate. And she literally would have come across as somebody who knew nothing. But it's very hard to explain to a client that you've just turned down the largest listenership morning programme on their behalf. She didn't take it very kindly. But she's still in business.